Welcome to Ramblings with Joe. Today's topic is age limits for political office. Specifically, what we're talking about here is Congress, Senate, and the presidency. And I have very mixed emotions on this. Number one, I understand the general consensus that this should happen, that we should have, these age limits because, well, recent history is showing us that we should. For instance, Joe Biden and the cognitive kind of lacking that he had during his last debate. I don't hold any animosity toward Joe Biden. He's no longer in the arena. I'm just using him as an example. And there he is up on the stage, and it's obvious he's in cognitive decline. This is something that we're going to have to address because people in general are living longer and having longer ability to stay cognitive. Grok, what is the percentage by party of Americans that would like age limits on these offices?
Recent polls show strong support across both parties. The May 2026 NPR PBS Marist poll found 78% of Democrats and 83% of Republicans favor age caps for Congress. Pew's 2024 data showed 76% of Democrats and 82% of Republicans supporting maximum age limits for federal elected officials. A February 2025 YouGov poll had 74% of Democrats and 63% of Republicans in favor. The gaps stay modest, usually within 5 to 11 points, with clear majorities on both sides.
So this is something the American people want. They want age limits on these offices. It's not going to happen because we would have to depend upon the people holding the offices to vote themselves out of a job.
That's the sticking point. Sitting members have zero incentive to pass something that removes them from power.
Additionally, the idea that the parties themselves want to keep these long-standing members on the committees that they're on and in the leadership roles that they're on. So when they are leaving those positions, someone younger, someone newer that might be from the other party is going to take their place. So the idea that they would vote that off is not going to happen either.
Seniority locks in committee chairs and leadership spots, which translates directly into power and funding control. Handing that to a younger or newer member from the other side is the last thing either party wants to risk.
So there's no incentive for either party to do this. On a personal belief note, which, kind of ramblings with Joe, I'm going to ramble a little bit about it. On a personal note, I don't like the idea that we're going to put age limits on these positions. Not because I ever had the intention of being in any of these positions, obviously not. But the idea that we're going to say anybody above, let's go with 70, anybody above 70 cannot hold these positions. The lower limit at 35 for the presidency, I think at 30 for House members and 33 for the Senate.
The House minimum is 25, the Senate is 30, and the presidency is 35.
At any rate, the idea that we have a lower end was given because they figured that these offices needed at least that much experience. Now, I understand that. You don't want an 18-year-old running the country as president, and you don't want an 18-year-old making serious decisions within the Congress. And the 25-year-old, I can understand that. Let's go to the age thing in specific now. Grok, what was the average age of the Founding Fathers?
The average age of the delegates at the 1787 Constitutional Convention was 42. Benjamin Franklin was the standout at 81, pulling the average up slightly. Without him, the median sat right around 41.
So Benjamin Franklin, at the age of 81, was a very important part of this, but he was definitely an important part and an important delegate at the Constitutional Convention. How hard did they lean into Benjamin Franklin to get that job done?
Franklin was already 81 and in poor health, so he didn't do the heavy lifting of daily debate or committee work. His real value was his reputation and steady presence.
Well, that kind of goes against how I feel about things, but I mean, did they consult him constantly, or was he just there propped up in a corner somewhere?
He wasn't propped up in a corner. Franklin attended most sessions despite his health and was consulted on key issues. His diplomatic experience and stature gave his input real weight, even if he didn't run the daily grind.
So they leaned into his wisdom, is what I'm understanding here. And that's something that I think that needs to be, observed and thought about before we make such a drastic move. The idea that we would take these most wizened men and women among us and say, you're out because you're too old. We just did away with a whole catalog of wisdom and know-how and diplomacy. And I think that would be a huge mistake. That being said, the majority of Americans want this. Grok, give me some examples of both parties of elderly statesmen and stateswomen.
Sure. On the Republican side, you have Chuck Grassley at 92, Hal Rogers at 88, and Nancy Mace is younger, but still in that category. On the Democratic side, it's Maxine Waters at 87, Steny Hoyer at 87, Nancy Pelosi at 86, and Jim Clyburn at 86. Both parties keep plenty of gray hair in the mix.
Tell me about Mitch McConnell and, Bernie Sanders.
Mitch McConnell is 84. He's had a long career, but his visible health struggles on camera have raised real questions about whether he's still up to the job. Bernie Sanders is also 84. He still shows the same fire and clarity he's had for decades and remains active in the Senate.
So Bernie Sanders is still delivering the same message. He's still a very active part of debates. He's still doing the job that he's always done. And he's rather old. Meanwhile, across the aisle, Mitch McConnell is really showing decline. He's really showing, but that inability to maintain at least that intellectual level that is needed to be a leader within the Senate. So the idea that we're going to just completely throw the, baby out with the bathwater, I believe is the saying, that's a bad idea. I think what we need to do is maintain common sense amongst the people who do the electing and say, this person can't stay. He is not, intellectually capable of doing this anymore. He's in too much cognitive decline. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders, I don't agree with his politics, but there he is doing the same job he's always done with the same vim and vigor.
That's the key distinction. Sanders is still sharp and engaged in the work. McConnell's decline has been obvious for a while. Voters and parties have the tools to deal with this case by case instead of a blanket age cutoff that sweeps out the capable along with the ones who aren't.
The problem is, again, the maintaining of the power of the parties. So they don't want to give up that power. Therefore, Mitch McConnell will stay where he is until he's absolutely unable to do the job or until his term is up and they decide to have another candidate up in there.
That's the real mechanism at work. The party protects its own until the decline becomes impossible to ignore or the term runs out. It's self-preservation dressed up as loyalty.
Which brings us back to the reason I'm doing this list. And that reason, that thing that I would like everybody to observe is that the party's not doing what's good for the American people, neither party, Republican or Democrat. They are doing what's good for the party and for those really, really rich people who can contribute the most to the party, as was talked about in my last podcast, which I have to apologize for the sound levels in that last podcast. I didn't have my my stuff together, and I'm not going to redo it because, well, I'm going to kind of keep the flow going with myself here. But they're not doing what you want. As their constituents, they're not doing what you want. The overwhelming majority of Americans want age limits on these three offices, congressman, senator, and presidency, and they're not going to do it. They're not going to say that we're not having that because that gives up way too much power for each party and gives a lot more power to the young people of America. And I can't comprehend why we keep voting for the same people.
Both parties serve their own power and their biggest donors first, not the voters. The American people want age limits, but Congress won't touch it because it threatens the seniority system that keeps them in control, and yet the same faces keep getting reelected.
What we need to do is have a third party, and I don't care who does it. We need to have a third party that will shake up to the core these politicians in both the Republican and Democratic Party. It has gotten so far afield now that for some reason we think that it's okay. There's a small contingency of the the Democratic Party that has started a socialist wing, and they're not being very, shy about it. They are talking about they are the Democratic Socialist Party. That has a big ring to it, doesn't it? A very familiar ring.
It's the Democratic Socialists of America, or DSA. They're not a separate party with their own ballot line, but a large organization, over 100,000 members, working mostly inside the Democratic Party.
Your two parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, have done such a miserable job and given such favorable treatment to the rich that the young people of America are now considering a socialist government a good move. That's on the two parties, and that's the point of this list. They are failing us. They are failing our country, and they are running our country into the ground. That's my personal opinion, and that's why I'm doing these topics. So age limits, I don't personally think that they should have age limits on anybody. I think that the voters can decide if someone is cognitively able to do the job, but the majority of Americans want it. So it's another example of your parties not giving you what you want on both sides of the aisle.
Age limits are popular with voters, but blocked by the very people who'd be affected, which fits the pattern you've been laying out.
Thanks for joining me today, Groff. I hope that we'll get to do this again. Our next topic is going to be congressional term limits, and that kind of falls in line with my belief system as far as this goes as well. Thank you again, Grok, and I will see you tomorrow. And I'd like to thank you all for joining me today, and leave a comment in the comment section about whether you think age limits are appropriate or we should handle them ourselves as voters. I hope you go out today and you have a great day. I hope you go out and you find peace, love, and dream. Until next time, Lahi Throat.